everybody, Winnie Anderson here. Welcome to The Courageous Entrepreneur. This is the show that shares information, strategies, and inspiration to help those who have dealt with and are recovering from child abuse and trauma. In this episode, which is brought to you by the Let's Talk Tech Show, which is the podcast for entrepreneurs who are confused, frustrated, and overwhelmed by technology. This episode features an interview with my friend and colleague, Becky Norwood. Becky is an adult survivor of child abuse. She experienced sexual abuse as a young person. And in this video, we're going to be talking about what led her to share the story of her abuse in a book, how depression haunted her, and how she relieved that depression through writing her story, how her book led to another book where she helped 31 other women tell their stories of abuse as well and begin the process of overcoming. And she's going to share some various things that she has worked on that have allowed her to get past the abuse and really begin to finally create the independent professional life that she has longed for. She'll share that she has been a lifelong entrepreneur, but that she always felt that she has held herself back from the true level of achievement that she could have had. She feels that she has underachieved, that she is under-earned, and that she's been trapped by a plateau, a financial plateau over her head. So sit back and I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll be back at the end of the interview to share your reflection exercise and action step for this episode. All right, so welcome, Becky. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you.
So let's just dive right in. And I have to ask you, what led you to share your story of abuse in a book?
You know, my story had kind of stuck with me for a very long time. It felt like, even though mine started when I was just a very small child, it went on throughout a part of my adulthood. Simply because when you start out as a child with abuse, that's all you know, and you seem, as you grow into adulthood, you attract the same things into your life. And so over the years, I've done all that I could do to, or I thought I had done all I could do to kind of overcome it, but I still had these horrible bouts of depression that just felt like a wet blanket that constantly was hanging over my head. Okay. And I really got tired of it. And there was a series we've had in our family 4 suicides. And there was
oh my God.
By the time the 4th one, I was so tired because I really struggled with depression with those times, as anybody would. But you finally have to say, all right, I've got to find a way to not go into these, and I kept working. I kept doing all the things I needed to say, but that inner thing was just so pronounced that I really tired of it. And I had been to enough trainings, and I'd been working with my clients on publishing their books. And as I was out networking, I was always saying, you've got a story in you. When are you going to tell it? And somebody looked at me and said, where's your story? And finally, and so I was really hesitant. Actually, when I first started learning about self-publishing, in the audience that day, I named my book. But 5 years later, I still had not done it, because every time I tried to sit down and write it, it just still hung on. It was hard to write. But then one of my very dearest friends, her name's Sue Ferreira, and I know you know her. Mm-hmm. Her and I went to an event, and we spent the day after this event, and it was all more on book publishing and content creation. And she said, and so I was just telling her I just felt the need to talk, and we spent the whole day walking along the coastline there in La Jolla. And then we went into Old Town San Diego, and she said to me, Becky, the only way you're going to get through this is if you just stand up and tell your story. So I made the decision right there and then that I would. And I came home and I just, like by divine providence, I guess you would say, had pretty much finished up with a whole big group of clients. And I knew I had needed to be out marketing for more clients, but I had been so busy with those that I didn't. And so I knew I was at a time where I had a choice to make. So I took 3 months off, and that's all I did was write. And it was amazing for me. When I had it finished, I had my family read it. Not all my family members, the ones that love me. And, the consensus was, well, you have to, it would be healthiest for you to because it made such a difference in me to write, because everything I wrote just kind of put things in perspective. Mm-hmm. It changed the way I felt about it. In essence, as I wrote my story, it began to be like I was writing a new story for myself. And it changed everything. And the depression lifted. I haven't had any bouts in about a year now.
That's wonderful.
And it's just been incredible. And then when I published, it was like, I was just such awe because so many reached out to me and said, thank you for having the courage. Mm-hmm. And so many reached out and said, I have had this experience too. And one of the things I did when I was writing my book is I started researching about this issue because I didn't know how massive this issue is.
Huge.
And when I started discovering the statistics, and they have no way to know if those are true, but right now it's standing like 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 boys, mm-hmm. girls and boys, as children. This isn't talking about all the other type of stuff that goes on, whether domestic violence or wherever. And abuse is abuse, no matter what kind of abuse. So, if it's emotional abuse, physical abuse, all these things, especially when it starts at childhood, it's so difficult to overcome. Mm-hmm. So from that, I realized that I could no longer keep quiet. I couldn't be silent. And so now it's developed into some really amazing things for me.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. So there are a couple of things there that I want to touch on. One is this issue of you have family that, obviously were involved either directly or indirectly as spectators, if you will, if not participants in what happened. Do you think that, was there any kind of fear or concern or sensitivity about those people hearing your story or seeing it in print? Do you think that possibly held you back from talking about it?
Okay. It did. And as it turned out, there were certain family members I didn't tell. And in hindsight, I probably should have told in advance. However, I did it for me and not for them. I didn't use their names.
Right.
I didn't use their locations. I did use my name, but we've been away from each other for so long. Maybe 2 or 3 people in the whole world would know that we had been family,
Right.
And even at that, it didn't give any names. In retrospect, a couple of them I should have probably told, but at the same time, it was kind of hilarious and sad and hilarious and amazing at the same time. Through Facebook, one family member found it and bought the book, read it, and called me and said it was absolutely fabulous, and how did I have the courage, and made him think a whole lot about what had transpired in our lives. But then he totally misrepresented it to my mother. And my mom was terribly, terribly hurt. And I've had a lot of conversations with her, and I sent her the book and I said, okay, here, just read it with an open mind. And it's taken a while, but now she has said, I am so amazed at what you're doing. And she says, I don't like your book because I asked the question, where was my mom?
Right.
Right. In my case, the perpetrator has passed away. Mm-hmm. so that I didn't have that concern. But those are some concerns because I work with women all the time to be writing their stories. And those are the first questions I ask. You know, is the perpetrator still alive? What about the family members? You know, but I had to do this for me, for my healing. And the remarkable changes that have happened in my life is just so worth it, you know. And I think in the what family members that I have left, the ones that have read it, it has made an impact on their lives. They don't like it, but it's made them think, and it's made them kind of really look at their lives too, because it happened to them as well. By the same person.
So direct abuse happened to them as well, not just that they were spectators.
No, it happened with them as well. Yeah. Maybe not as pronounced as mine, but it happened.
Right. Yeah.
And it's colored their world, and they're still living it.
Yeah. They refer to it, I've seen it referred to as the long shadow of abuse in general, childhood abuse. And your description of that depression being like a heavy wet blanket is kind of like that long shadow. And I think that finally telling the story, no matter who you tell it to, or you come out as boldly as you have with a whole book about it, I think it does help you lift that shadow, lift that blanket, and come out from under that awful burden that this really is. It's weight.
Yeah.
So can you go ahead? I'm sorry.
My observation on that is that it sets the story free. It no longer is your story, and it's like it releases it. It's just gone. You know,
gives you permission to write a new one.
It totally does. And I was even having a conversation with my husband about it last night, because he's been remarking about the amazing changes that I've made in my life, and what I'm doing about all of this, and how I've started a huge movement now to help women. And I said to him, you know, it's so amazing as I stopped to reflect that the pain of that past that held on to me for so long, and I was 60 when I wrote my book, you know, that pain, now I can talk about it, but it doesn't make me start crying. It doesn't make me feel anguish. It doesn't make me depressed. It's like it's detached from me. It's like it's something that's far away, you know. And even though you have things that will trigger, most of the time I've learned how to deal with the triggers. And I've also seen, like, because I wrote a new story and because I've reached out to so many others to help, it's changed it. It's just changed it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that past, the before and the after. Can you really talk about or pinpoint some things that you feel the story and your abuse that kind of left you with, I'm going to just call them scars, things that were actively holding you back from achieving all that you really wanted to achieve prior to telling your story? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. In my abuse, I was always told I was ugly, stupid, I would never make it in the world. As part of, aside from the sexual abuse, it was constantly, and when you get told that enough times, you start believing it. I have never been self-employed. I have never been employed by anybody else. I've always been self-employed.
Okay.
My whole life. A lot of different little business. Started out with a little gift basket or a little flower arranging company, you know, and yet I never had the courage to take it all, any of those businesses, as far as I could have.
Okay.
And it seemed like I had a plateau when it came to money, because I was never allowed any of the control over, even when I ran a family business, it was my brother and my dad ran it. And when they had a big split in between there, it was a saw sharpening business. Same time that they had this big confrontation and my brother moved away, this business was just really going well. And my father came to me and said, well, I need help. Well, it was at the same time that my marriage just ended, and I was 6 months pregnant and had a 13-month-old. And I knew how well that business was going. So 3 weeks after my second child was born, I walked into that saw sharpening business, all these big machines, and it just petrified me. And he handed me it was must about 12-inch thick notebook. Here, learn the machines. Wow. And I was scared to death in the sense of, for him, it was another way of controlling. For me, I saw the opportunities to make a living and have a way to provide for my children in a very big way. Mm-hmm. I dug in and I learned every one of those machines, and I had a very, very good business, but he always had control of the money. And after he was no longer in the picture, I didn't want the connection to him, so I sold that part of that business.
Okay.
Ended up getting back, sold, getting back, sold, getting back. Finally, I don't have it anymore. But there was something deep that I didn't want that connection, that it was something that he had himself had created originally. But then I went on to, just because of my nature, I guess, to start other businesses, and I would get so far and sabotage myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's been a process. Even now, I'm working very hard. I've got a fabulous book and some mentoring on this. It's called Happy Pocket Full of Money.
Awesome.
And for my subsequent book that was published, which was bringing together 30 other women who have all gone through abuse, and the name of that book is We Choose to Thrive. And our voice is rising to share with abuse survivors that they too can heal. Even on that, I didn't charge anybody for that, to do that. And I did it for a reason, but at the same time, that's not how you run a business.
Right.
Right. So I am really happy I did it, because it was a massive impact. There was, right now the count is over 5,000 people have seen those videos. There's been many people that have gone and picked up the book. So was it wrong not to charge? No. And I'm struggling with, do I charge on the next one? Because I have people asking me to be in the next one. But I know I've got to charge something in order to keep the dream alive. And I have so many other projects I need to do, but I also have to have the resources. So it's the worthiness. There's still those little pieces.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so I have been very actively working with myself that I deserve,
Yeah, that's, I really just so appreciate your being so honest about this particular issue and the whole issue of self-sabotage, because I think that for those of us who have experienced abuse, and especially that, I think emotional abuse, we all have it. When you're abused, period, you've got that, right. There's an emotional component, because you believe as a child, I must deserve this. I must really not be worthy. I must really not be lovable. So then as you move through your life, yes, this self-sabotage is constantly there. And I think part of it is that, I don't really deserve this anyway. So and since we've been told we're ugly, we're stupid, we'll never amount to anything, we then push away the good things that do come our way, because, hey, I'm not worthy. This can't be right for me to have.
Even relationships, even, with partners in our lives.
Yes.
I stayed single after my first marriage. I attracted the same thing as my dad with my first marriage, and after that was over, I was so worried that I would attract the same thing that I stayed single for 20 years. Wow. And now I'm very, very happily married to an amazing man, but it's because I did a lot of work on myself as far as, my worthiness. And I think each day is a new day, and you keep working on being able to develop yourself into one that knows and believes and feels and speaks worthiness.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And especially if for those of us who are working to really apply and adopt the whole law of attraction, abundance mindset and all of that, it's the receiving that's the big problem. It's the asking, no problem, sure, but then it's the believing and the receiving, so that you can truly receive the greatness that the universe has for you. And this little subconscious gremlin in there can keep pushing that stuff away that can keep us trapped. And I think that's really what happens to us.
Well, I work with myself daily on that, and I work with it through some very taking the time to meditate, some very positive affirmations, watching the words I speak, because I don't acknowledge. Yep. I've learned not to acknowledge or talk about, oh my, I'm really struggling financially.
Right.
Instead, I know that it's the universe is abundant, and I am too.
Right.
So, it takes a conscious working on it and a decision to pay close attention to the words we speak, the thoughts we think, and how we feel within. And taking that time out every day to take time to get quiet and take care of ourselves. Even if it's for 15 minutes, it's very powerful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do. Now, you mentioned that you really feel like this has become a mission for you. So can you talk a little bit about, yes, you've got the book, and am I going to be creating a new anthology, and how will I create a business model that I can really thrive and support other people too? Do you think that that's a big core part of moving forward?
Absolutely.
How else is this mission informing what you're doing?
Well, I'm working with a couple of other ladies right now, and we're not quite ready to launch it, but we're doing the Million Women Message Tour.
Okay.
And we're starting Women Up International. And it's all in the groundwork and planning stages. Very, very powerful. And it is not about, it's not about I'm sorry about what happened to me.
Right. It's
not about I'm sad. It's about let's choose to thrive. Let's find how to be happy. Let's join arms, support each other, and be well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And several of the ladies that were in this book, we've kind of started working together to try, and it has been amazing. And yes, I want to keep the We Choose to Thrive series going. But then as the women, I've seen some amazing changes in the women that participated in that back. Some of them were already coaching, have already done a lot of work on themselves, but it was a really interesting blend. Some were just starting down that journey.
Okay.
And they have made such massive changes. It's just been like this. So as they continue to make their changes, then we will do another book series of Beyond Thriving or something on that,
Right.
So there's a lot of beautiful things in the works right now, and it will be an international movement.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the people in your book, and I know we won't reveal names or anything specific about that. Can you talk about some of the turnarounds or the improvements that they have seen and experienced since telling their story? I have a private Facebook group that I'm pretty selective as far as who can come into the group, and it's for a reason. Yeah.
And the reason is that they need that safe spot to be able to.
Yes.
I'm really having a struggle today. Can I get some? I need help, and they do that. And what has happened at first, it was only me responding. Now the very same women that at the start when they first joined the group were doing that, on a regular basis, I'm just really struggling, are now, for the new ones that are coming into the group, are now even answering and responding and lifting them up before I get, maybe I'm busy with something and I haven't checked my Facebook, And so now they're doing that. And some of them are now writing their books. I'm coaching a couple of them right now to help them to get their books going. So coaching has also become part of the picture. And a lot of this is new to me. And it was interesting. I had somebody ask me the other day, where did you learn to public speak? And I go, what? Me? And I said, I just hired somebody to coach me to do it more effectively. And she goes, oh my gosh, look what you're doing already.
And practice. You just do it.
You just do it. Yeah. And then she says, well, how'd you learn to be a coach? And I'm like, I just do it.
Yeah.
it is what it is,
Yeah.
but, I've worked hard, and I know you have too, to surround yourself with amazing people. And as life has gone on, I've been very selective. When I had my first marriage ended, I started being very selective in who I allowed myself to be around. And even though it's been a long journey, and a lot of things, I had children to raise. I had all kinds of stuff that I had on my plate, running a business and,
Right.
all the things that go with that. But I totally love where I am in my life now.
That's so great. That's so great. Yeah. It's easy to be re-traumatized, especially if there are people in your life that are connected. I mean, if you're still connected to your abuser, every time I would go home, and I would only go home to see my sister, really, but she lives with my mom. So every time I would go home, you're re-victimized, you're re-traumatized. And, that was a choice I made because I didn't want to lose connection to my sister. And I felt like it was important for me to be with her and to support her. But at the same time, I knew I was being re-traumatized. So I think that's a big part of, and I applaud you for being selective. And that's exactly what you need to do. I mean, I had to go for a period of time right in the middle of my therapy to I just can't do it. I can't, I love you, but I cannot put myself in this place, right, especially right then, because you're so sensitive at that particular point. So I think
it's recognizing it and honoring yourself with that.
Right. And safety first, really taking care of yourself first. That's so super critical. And I think the other piece then is recognizing that while there are these points in the recovery process, each of us travels the journey differently and responds differently. So we might go through the same remembering process, the same acknowledgement point that to say that was abuse, that was not normal, that was not right, what happened. But then how we get there and how we pass through it is different for each of us.
And you have to honor that. And
that's right.
I always say abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter what kind of abuse, it's still abuse.
Right.
And there's no way to measure how you react to abuse,
right,
and how the extent of damage it does for you.
Right.
And I've learned that because every one of that was in my book, the group book that we did, We Choose to Thrive. I interviewed every one of them. Do you know, I learned more about myself from each one of them. It was absolutely amazing. But some of them, you think, wow, that wasn't much, but it impacted their lives forever. And so there is no, I'm going to compare my abuse with your abuse. No,
we're not having a contest.
This is no contest, and that's not what it's about. Right. It's where we are now and what we're going to do about it to be well, alive, happy, and thrive.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful perspective. I just am so happy for you, proud of you. So thrilled for you. So, and I really, again, I just applaud you for being honest enough to share where you are, where you've been, and the courage that you're displaying, being here on this interview, and also moving forward with how you're shaping this movement and really becoming a leader in this area, because it is so incredibly needed. I was surprised at the sheer volume, the statistics that are only estimated, as you said, because there's no true way of, little kids aren't going to go, hey, over here, and there's so much avoidance and not looking at it, not calling it what it is. So I really do applaud you.
Thank you. And for adults, many will never spoken up, and it is weighed heavy. And I firmly believe there's been many that have gone to the grave with never saying a word, and have had lives that were not fulfilled and as happy as they could have been if that had not happened to them, or if they had found a way to rise above it.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is that this life we're given here on this earth is just a brief moment. But in that brief moment, it's many years. And in those many years, if we're not living it fully and enjoying it, oh gosh, this life goes so fast. Time goes so fast. Before you know it, you're looking at yourself and you're saying, I'm 60. Oh my gosh, how did this happen? And I haven't done very many of the things I've always dreamed of doing.
Right.
You know? And so now if I can step up and say, if I can only help one person, it's worth it. But already, and just since my first book was published in August, I've helped many, and
oh yeah,
and it's growing, and it fills me, and it gives me life, it gives me joy, it gives me reason to know that maybe I'll live to 120 and be impacting the world, you know?
Yeah. And it ripples out. It really does, because as each individual is changed, they're able to then continue this new powerful life of joy for themselves and positively impact all the people that they come into contact with.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. The way I look at it is every day that you don't overcome and that you don't choose to thrive, you allow that abuser to win.
Yes.
And they just continue to hold you trapped.
That says it very well. Because if we stay down there, that's exactly who wins.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And
fantastic.
It's, so I just reach out. Anybody that's listening to this, just know that you're not alone. You've got a support system here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's more and more of us that are standing.
Yeah, more than you realize. And they're really, that old saying, strength in numbers, it really is true, because as you recognize that others have survived, others have dealt with this, are still dealing with it, there is that strength and inspiration and motivation then to fight that good fight and get past it yourself. Mm-hmm. So Becky, we know, yes, your book is out there. Your books are out there. So folks can find that. The best way probably is just go to Amazon, right? And even just search for your name and your books will come up, right?
Right.
What are some other ways for folks to get in touch with you and connect with your community?
Okay, on Facebook, it's facebook.com and then it / the woman I love and the number 1.
Okay, great.
Because there was somebody else that had the woman I love and it was a song.
Oh, great.
And otherwise, I have a website that's thewomanilove.com or Becky@thewomanilove.com.
Awesome.
Email. Yeah.
And of course, we'll have links to this so that folks can find you once the interview will appear on my Facebook page, but also YouTube. It'll be on my website, so folks will be able to go right to those sites and get those links if they're wondering about, what did she say? How do I connect with her? So again, I'm so thrilled to know you. I'm so proud of you.
And I'm proud of you because I see the growth in you and the things that you're doing.
Thank you.
We all have a role.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I will talk to you soon, and thank you everyone for watching and listening today.
Thank you.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that. Becky is such a great person. Remember, her 2 books are The Woman I Love and We Choose to Thrive. You can find both of them on Amazon. Just search for her name, Becky Norwood. You can also get them on my website. So if you're watching this on my website at winnieanderson.com/Becky Norwood, all one word, then you can find the link right there on the page. And if you're not, you want to head over there and you can get the links to everything that we referred to, all the places that you can reach out to Becky. So your reflection exercise for this episode: if you're a trauma survivor, and especially if you're an adult survivor of child abuse, or you've experienced even workplace trauma as an adult, it's time to think through where you are on your healing journey and to identify whether or not your experiences and the beliefs you've developed and the behaviors that you've adopted to deal with that are now actively holding you back. if you are still very early in the healing journey and you're dealing with memories and having a difficult time managing your emotions or managing your relationships, then I encourage you to get help to begin the healing process, to truly begin the healing process, and to process all of the feelings and memories and emotions that you're having. So ask yourself, do you find yourself really doing or not doing things and wondering why that happened? That's really what self-sabotage is all about. We find ourselves doing something that it actually is disempowering or unproductive and going, why did I do that? That's self-sabotage. So do you find yourself putting others' needs, especially clients or coworkers, so far ahead of your own needs and feelings that you actually resent that level of over-delivering that you're providing? That's another example of self-sabotage, and yet another example of how the past is holding you back. So are you ready to break free from that? You have to ask yourself and reflect on that. And now your action step. So I've become a big believer and user of journaling. I journal to think things through when I'm working on a project, and I journal to think my own feelings through and what I want to have happen, what I really want to get clear on. So if you don't have a journal, I strongly encourage you to pick one up and to then start using it. You can have get a fancy one, but can just be a notebook from the dollar store. So no matter what you use, if you have something, you want to open it up and take the page and you want to hold it, upright like this. And you want to divide the page down the center from top to bottom. On the left-hand side of the page, I want you to write down where you are now in terms of things like the money you have, your business success, achievements, contribution to the community, your family situation, your lifestyle. I want you to just list them all very clearly. You can skip a line or two in between each item. How many do you write? Write until you feel like you got enough. If you need to start another page, you can, and then divide that page and do the same thing on the right-hand side, or the left-hand side rather. You're going to write down all of these things where you are right now. Then on that far right side, on the other side of that line that divides your page, you're going to write a corresponding want for what you've got. So if right now your finances are in a position where they are not where you want them to be, right, you can just say that my finances are less than I want them to be. You can state the exact number. But then on the right, you do want to get exact, and you want to be very clear on exactly what you want. So let's say you want to eventually earn $1 million, or you eventually want to, like Jack Canfield, build a $1 billion book brand. So just be very, very specific. So you might need to think that through. Think through what you want. So once you have that listed, you now have your left side and your right side, where you are and where you want to be. Take a line and connect the two. You can make it an arc if you want, or you can make it a straight line, but just draw a line that connects the two. And then for each pair, on the line you drew, I want you to write a word, a phrase, or a really short sentence that states what you would have to do, be, or have in order to create that want that you have listed. So just to give you an example, maybe you, in order to have that level of revenue, maybe you need to finish the book that you've been talking about writing. Maybe one of your wants is to become an authority in your field. A book is a great way to do that. So finish the book, start the book, write the book, etc. So you want to do that for each little pair of of what you've written. And what you've done is you've created a visual bridge. You've created that bridge and you've identified what that bridge is paved with. And really, we're talking about the first step, right? Or a big step to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So next is to ask yourself, what is keeping you from doing what you wrote on that bridge? What's keeping you from what you want to achieve? And then the next question to ask yourself is, are you really ready to break free from the chains of the past that have been weighing you down so long? And are you ready to break free and create the future that you really want to achieve? And I'm not saying that you're struggling right now. You know, Becky has been, she's a great example. She's been an entrepreneur her entire life. So she's had levels of success, but she knows she could have achieved more, which means she knows that she could have had a bigger impact on her own family, on herself, and on the world that she comes into contact with. So don't think you got to be struggling in order to face this stuff and move forward. So that's your reflection exercise, your action step for today. And again, this has been Winnie Anderson for the Courageous Entrepreneur Show. And this episode was brought to you by Let's Talk Tech, which is the podcast that demystifies the software, services, systems, and apps entrepreneurs need to run and grow a profitable business. You can find that at theletstalktechshow.com. So remember, you're capable of so much more than you think you are. Bye for now, and I'll see you in another episode soon.